If you don't have a good hook or you don't have like the first impression which grabs the attention of people, you lost already.
Really simple words, not like fancy dictionary words.
If you are not controversial, like it's boring. Pulling people a little bit backwards to propel them forward.
And then they change their life to have an even better time. Hi there, I'm Karsten. I'm the co-founder of Meta Startup Studio, and today I'm acting as a host here with you, together with my partner and co-founder, Olga Kirilova. And we're going to talk about content creation today, from covering foundations to going more into intermediate strategies and tips and tricks, and very practical elements as well that'll help you get from zero to the first 100K in yearly profits. So with that said, a few words about Olga. She has managed multi-million marketing budgets before. She has managed a marketing team for the regional Adidas office of over 40 people. She has herself spent a lot of time and money on figuring out how to translate all this experience into making money and building content that converts in her own business as we started out. So with all that experience in mind, I'm gonna just go through a few topics together with her today to dissect what is needed really for content creation when you're just starting out. Welcome.
Thank you. What a nice introduction.
All right, so let's dive in. I have a few topics here prepared. So the first topic is actually general rules. So we're going to go through a few points here that came up in our journey, like mostly for you, as you were like our leads in content creation and marketing. And I just want to get your point of view on these things. So the first thing I've got written down here is general rules before we're diving into, looking more at how to cater content creation to the different stages of business building, which is another thing we'll talk about in a second. Just some general rules for any content you're ever going to create. And one thing that I had as a first thing is to have a hook. Tell me, why do we need hooks? Like, why is it so important? What is it about hooks? What is a hook?
I'd like just generally maybe like before we even jump into like the like general rules of content creation and the hooks specifically, I just wanted to say that's like, thanks for mentioning like all the corporate background I have. However, it's really interesting, right? So you have this experience within like big corporations and marketing and even leading big teams, right? But when you go out on your own, in your own business, it's a completely different ballgame. So it actually has nothing to do with what you've been doing before, right? Especially on this like initial stages of business building.
You don't have that budget.
Yeah, exactly. Because like you don't have the budgets, you don't have the assets, you don't have, I don't know, maybe like designers or like I in my previous career, right? Like I worked a lot with like in-house design team, like I worked with the top creative agencies as well, right? So it's like you have a lot of resources, but when you're just starting out, is a lot of times like you're starting very scrappy, right? And there is this dissonance a lot of times for people because they think that they need to have everything figured out. They need to have everything pretty, right? It can't be raw because they're used to this, like kind of a way of how they saw the big brands are doing this, right? But you kind of like, I think like even from the mindset perspective, you really need to get into your head that you're in a completely different situation right now. And instead of investing a lot of money in the beginning, like many people burn a lot of cash, right? When they're like just starting out to...
Like us,
to prettify everything, right? Whilst actually you don't need this in the beginning. And I think like this is the most difficult part to accept.
It's like the social element, right? Because we used to come from Adidas background, right? And Adidas is this big brand, which especially from a marketing perspective, it's amazing. All these beautiful, super cool videos that you have somehow been part of creating, and you put your name in the social media world against those amazing campaigns. And all of a sudden you have your little starting a business, raw, not so pretty looking campaign. It's almost embarrassing, and this is something like from a mindset perspective, thank you for bringing this up, to like just get over and to understand this is normal. This is a process to go through and it's okay. And you don't need to be what a multi-billion euro brand is like from the start. You can get there later.
Yes. Don't compare yourself to the status where the huge corporation is at, right? Like you're in a completely different stage and that's okay. This is totally normal, right? You're starting from zero.
Yes. So, okay, thank you for this little detour and putting some more context on this. That was actually perfect. So with that, before we dive into more like process-related questions, let's just cover in general any content you ever create in today's, world. Like hooks is a big topic, and it's an important thing to learn and understand why and how important it actually is. Why? Like, what is it?
Well, like it's because like I think in general, people need to understand like what is marketing, right? And like marketing is about grabbing and holding attention, right? So it's like everything that you do, you need to grab the attention first. And in the sea of information, whatever people is doing right now digitally, it's so much that you gotta stand out somehow, right? So if you don't have a good hook or you don't have like the first impression which grabs the attention of people, right? It's like you lost already, right? Because there is so much noise. And it's not only about like the other content creators out there, but it's about the whole freaking life that people have, right? Because like it's kind of like when you're creating content, you're not just competing with other people out there. Actually, if you are new as an entrepreneur, just forget about others. Actually, they're not your main competition, but your clients' chores, children, partners, pressures, work, Netflix, like making food, like whatever that is, this is your main competition. So like if you're not able to rip people out of their reality and put them in the context of what you are telling them, like they will not stay with you to watch your content, right?
So what is the hook, maybe? Just to get this clear, just in case.
Just in case. I mean, like, it can be like just the first sentence of your copy, right? Like something that's like grabs attention like from the start, right? So it can be like the first short sentence of your copy. If we're talking about like, I don't know, like LinkedIn posts, for example, or even like if we're talking about like Instagram posts, if you talk about blogging, right? So like if you
Reels
write,
even.
So, like Reels, like I would talk a little bit like more about the image as well, right? But it's generally like the first sentence that you say,
exactly,
right? It's kind of like it needs to be something controversial, because like if you are not controversial, like it's boring, you know? Like if you just say the same thing that everybody says, you know, like what's the point of looking at you, right? Or reading like the rest of the copy. So it can be something controversial. It can be something very personal. It can be something which is intriguing, right? It's
can
like
you maybe give some examples just to make it very, very tangible for people?
I mean, like when I talk about controversial, right? Like, I don't know, like for example, like we're now launching like our program, right? Get Clients Bootcamp. And like, we believe that it is like extremely like hands-on and very practical, right? So, and I might talk about like the benefits, like, oh, like it's very nice because it's like, it's very practical, right? Versus the pre-recorded courses. Or I can just start out like my post on LinkedIn, for example, saying that like pre-recorded courses are dead, right? And it's a much stronger statement than like, oh, like I don't know, Get Clients Bootcamp is the most practical program out there. You know, like nobody cares.
An element of over-exaggeration and not to feel bad about. I think there's a big mindset drama also a lot about like I don't want to be so controversial. I don't want to exaggerate because it's not true. Like, but that's exactly what's gonna get people's attention. If you don't grab people's attention, they're not gonna read the rest. If they don't read the rest, they're not gonna work with you. If they don't work with you, their life is not gonna get better, you know.
Exactly.
So,
then you can never help people, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you can be upset about it, or I don't know, like dislike it. But whether you like it or not, you know, like this kind of things get the attention. So, and once you grab the attention, you need to hold the attention, right? And I'm probably going to talk about like a bit later, right? So it can be exaggeration, right? It can be something controversial. And also, like, I think a lot of people are scared of saying controversial things because they know that a lot of people will disagree with them and dislike that. But actually, in a way, like also like from the mindset perspective, you need to celebrate, right? Like if there is someone who disagrees with you, who has a different opinion on what you are saying, then you become the leader, right? And people don't follow just like someone random, right? People want to follow the leaders. So
point of view.
Exactly. So your personal point of view and the strong point of view is that what will give you the status of a leader, right? Somebody who people will follow. And there is also this thing in marketing which you can talk about repel to attract, right? Like by making a very strong personal statements, you might repel some people, right? And that's totally okay. And I think like that's also something that people need to get in their head. It's not as scary actually, because that frees the space for people who are attracted to what you're saying to come in, right? Repel to attract. So you're repelling people who anyways would not work with you, but you're attracting those much faster who agree with your point of view.
Okay, awesome. So hooks, basic.
And something else, like, sorry that I'm like, but
this is gonna happen a lot today, I feel.
I know. But the thing is, like, it's not only about the copy and the first sentence, right? Like, it's also about like the first visual, right? So, like, for example, like I'm doing a lot of Instagram stories, right? And like And the first story is also the attention grabber, right? So like, and actually there's something that's, I don't know, like maybe not talked enough about, but actually on Instagram, like the Instagram stories is the best tool for conversion, right? It's not so much for lead generation or for attracting new clients, right? Because your stories are only being shown to people who follow you, right? But it's an awesome conversion tool. So if you really want to nurture and convert people through your Instagram stories, right, you need to make them watch the Instagram stories, right? So your first story, the very first one that they see, it needs to be grabbing attention enough in order to, like, for people to go through like the rest of the stories that you posted, right? So even image-wise. And for example, like if you would observe the really big bloggers, right? Like those who like known in the space of like personal blogging, for example, it's really funny because a lot of times when people launch, like do a sales launch, right? And then launching a new info product, for example, a lot of times what appears as the first story is like half naked body, right? It's like kind of like show your ass, right? Like when you sell something, because like even on physiological level, right? People are being attracted to these images, right? So for example, like showing like sports, exercise, you know, like being at the beach, like in your bikini or whatever, like whether you like it or not, it grabs attention and it holds the attention of people, right? So it's kind of like, don't use it all the time because people will get used to it, right? And will stop working. But like in a certain moments when, I don't know, you have a big launch coming up or something, if you really need to grab attention, you can also use that, right? Because like all the big bloggers are using this.
Yes.
If you really observe that.
So really getting over it from a mindset perspective, like this is something where you are gonna create some people who become your fans and love you, and some people who disagree with you and dislike you for what you say and how you say it. But it's the main way, or the most important way actually, to get out there and get the attention that allows you then to hold the attention in the follow-ups. And this could be in video, this could be in copy, and this first sentence. And you can even ask like, you know, GPT, like ChatGPT or whatever other, you know, source that you have, like based on this post, what would be a great hook? And this will already give you, or give me 10 great hooks for this. It'll give you ideas. And again, like make them yours, but don't be afraid to go into this. So I think this is enough for hooks. Number un. So the next topic, specificity. Maybe we cover them a bit faster, these topics. So next one is specificity. Like why is this important? And it's a crazy important one.
Specificity is the most important one, I would say, like in whatever communication you are creating. Because, and I think like that's where majority of people, especially the clients who come to us, struggle a lot, right? Because so coaches, yoga teachers, even creatives, right? Like if you look at what they do, there is a lot of desire to make it generally for everybody, right? So, and this like general content in a very like vague generic terms, when we are talking, it's attracting no one, because you're trying to talk to everybody, but actually you are talking to nobody, right? And that's like, and that's why for majority of times people like get stuck on this hamster wheel of content creation, and they think like, I'm doing so much, I'm talking about so much, why the clients are not coming, right? Why is it not resonating? Well, it's not resonating because it's not specific, right? And I think like we talked about it like in one of the previous episodes like of the podcast, that's, you know, like nobody like in the world wakes up in the morning, right, and says like, I want to take my power back, or like, oh, I feel like, you know, like the fire of my passion is not burning as much, I want to reignite my passion. Like you don't talk like this in like in normal life, right? So when you're using this language, nobody connects. But people have very specific life situations, specific problems that they're facing, specific issues that they want to solve, right? So if you're not talking to those, how would people on earth identify that whatever the heck you're doing is actually useful for them? All right? So this is something that you need to keep in mind, because you're not talking to generic personality out there, right? Or how like sometimes like if you worked for a big brand before, right? In marketing agencies, there is this like general like customer persona, you know, like they're talking. It's not a general customer persona. It's actual human with the actual problems, with actual everyday routines, right? So the more specific you are, the better they are able to identify. Yes, it is for me. Yes, it solves my specific problem. Yes, it talks to me. Yes, I see you can do something for me. And I don't know, maybe like you have some example that comes to mind, but I don't know, like generally, even taking this example, right? Like me back then, like in the corporate scenario, when every day I was waking up in the morning and I didn't want to go to work. Like I didn't want to go out of the bed. Like every time I would come back from work, I would tell you, it's like, I hope they fire me because I hate this job so much. I hate how it makes me feel, but the pay is good. So I'm not sure I will be ever able to leave it in order to start my own business, right? But this is very specific words that I was using, very specific words.
So
like,
if I would use the same words in my marketing, you'd be like, yes, this is me.
Exactly. If you told me like, hey, are you someone who every day comes from work and says like, gosh, I hope my company fires me because I can't stand it anymore, but I'm not sure I can live because the pay is so good, I would be, yes, thank you. You understand me. You know what I mean? So, but it's very different from saying, or like take your power back, like reimagine, reinvent your life or whatever that is.
So what I'm hearing from you, to summarize specificity, because there's like, and I agree, it's like the number one most important thing. And that's also partially why we structure our business building process the way we structure, right? We ask people to niche down 4 times in the beginning. Why? Because then you can be even more specific. Because if I'm a coach, I can, even if I don't say, take your power back, but I can say specific things. But if I say specific things that should apply to everyone, they're again not that specific. They're not going to apply to everyone. So, but if I'm niching down to very specific audience with a very specific problem, and it's like really few people like this, I really can speak to them, understand exactly like what you said. What do they say every day? How do they complain about this problem? Which words do they use to describe it? And I can be very specific. I can also be very specific with the solutions I offer. If I want to help everyone with coaching, I can offer mindset stuff, But if I help someone grow a career from senior manager to director, I can be very specific with the types of tools, the communication tools, the leadership tools that they would need to generally make this step in an organizational setting of sorts.
100%, right? Because like it's really then becomes very catered to the specific situation the person is, right? Like, because like, for example, now we work a lot with executive coaches, right? And whenever we do like interviewing their potential clients, right? What we hear a lot from the executives, right? Is like, oh, I have a lot of this pressure from like the top, right? But I also have the pressure from my team. So I'm like kind of like in this sandwich of
between
pressure.
The board and the
exactly
and
the team. Right, I feel very isolated. I actually don't communicate that much, like with my team, kind of like on the same level, right? Like everybody's like out there for themselves. It feels lonely at the top, right? And there are like all these very specific issues these people are facing, right? And it will be very different from somebody like who is a first-time manager, So it's like, how do you talk their in their language, right, and address their specific situation in order for them to connect to what you are saying?
Absolutely. So niche down, talk to these people, capture their language, use their exact words. That's how you can be specific. Talk to practical, tangible, everyday situations. Challenge yourself in your marketing. Like, am I talking to a very specific, tangible situation in their life, or am I saying some general woo, blah, blah, that people are going to be having a difficult time relating to their life somehow. So always an important sense check. And then the second point I wanted to make on this before we move to the next is just this jargon that you learn as you become a specialist in something, right? And you mentioned this, right? This like, take your power back as a coach. Or, this happens in every industry. As you go really deep into AI, deep learning, you will have your deep AI learning, whatever that is. I'm not. But, if you were, you had some like words that everyone is like who is in that space, they really know these words and they talk in these words. But if you want to sell AI to like, a normal person out there, let's say, if you use these words, they'll just be confused because they don't understand what this means. As a coach, when you say take your power back, you connected to a deeper life journey that you've gone through, and kind of you associate a lot of things with it. But the normal person you want to give this journey to, they don't understand that yet, maybe, right? So it's like very important to also move beyond your jargon and use baby language. You taught me this, like talk to people like babies, like really simple words, not like fancy dictionary words, which we all try to use to sound cool, but actually do the baby words, because that lands much easier and much better.
Yeah, it's actually like this baby language, like you said, like a talking like in a more simplified language is also a very important topic, because like a lot of times, and again,
you anticipated the next point.
The next
simple
point,
language.
Simple language, right? Because like a a lot of times, like what happens when we're in corporate, and it's like, and I think that was so deeply engraved in me actually when we went on this like own business journey, is writing this politically correct like corporate style emails, you know, and it's like, and that was something that was so deep in me that's every time like you would try to like write a post, right, or create like any piece of communication, you would look for make it more sophisticated from your perspective.
Because you learned that it's professional.
Exactly. So you learn this professional, and we'll start using like some words which you would never use in like when you speak to a friend. Like when you talk to a friend, if I talk to you, I'm not using like big grand words to describe something. I'm not like telling you like, oh, Karsten, you know, like how about today we have a profound experience together, you know? But like a lot of times, like if you look at the posts of people, right, when they're starting the journey and they come from corporate background, it's like all over the place. And I think like this is also something to be still very careful. Like if you are creating content with the help of ChatGPT, for example, like or any AI tools, right? Like watch out for these things, because like AI sometimes like still at this point acts like as a dumb salesperson, right? So they have this like beautiful packaging around, but actually it's a lot of water, so like it doesn't hold any meaning, right? So it's like a lot of like beautiful, sophisticated words together.
It learned to be very professional sounding.
Exactly. So it sounds profesh, right? But actually like it's very dull or it's too grand, and it also makes your copy non-believable for people, especially if it's sales copy, right? So when you're like telling people like, oh, you're gonna have this like life transformative experience, you know, like, and something, it's too grand to be believable. So rather shrink it down, talk in normal words, you know, like if you would be sitting with a friend like on a couch or in a cafe somewhere, how would you talk? So write as you were talking, you know, like in the same language, using the same expressions. And generally also challenge yourself maybe to reduce, like if you're writing copy, for example, to reduce your copy like by like, I don't know, like half or even 2/3 of it, right? Because you can essentially say the same thing in a less amount of words, right?
Yes.
And in a very simple words, right? Like with less adjectives, like, I don't know, especially wary, like, you know, like put in like some words like
Very
like,
extremely
highly, exactly. Like get rid of all these words because they actually don't add any value.
Okay, so simple language. Also, you already anticipated the next one in some way. No, but it's good. We can move. We need to move forward anyway. So small sentences, you know, like kind of what you said. Like try to minimize in general your content, because people like they see a big text, no way they're gonna read it. Also, so it's easier for the brain of the end customer to follow your thought path if you make short sentences one after the other. Also, actually, algorithms are picking up on this. And if an algorithm sees a really long paragraph and sentence, they don't like it. If it's like small bullet points or small short sentences, oftentimes this gets pushed as better content in the algorithm. So reduce the things you say in general and reduce each sentence to a small understandable sentence, and rather break one big one apart.
Yes,
in that
100%.
process.
So there
also
are like
break lines.
There are two things in this, right? Because like for our brain, when we're looking at the big paragraph, it feels like a mountain to climb, right? And there is also this thing, like when I started climbing the mountain, it's kind of embarrassing to give up halfway. So I rather don't start at all, right? So like when we're looking at the huge paragraph, it's like, oh, instead of like trying to read and understand and like maybe giving up somewhere halfway, I rather just skip it, right? So like our brain just tries to skip these big paragraphs because it's too tiresome to read them. So like actually like you will do a huge favor to your customer reading the copy, but also to yourself, right? Because like actually they will read the copy if it's rather in short, like snappy sentences than like in these huge paragraphs, right? And like also remember that whenever you're writing copy, like the job of each sentence is to lead them to read the next sentence, right? And it's kind of like when people are reading like this, so they read the first sentence that led them to reading the next sentence and the next sentence, they go into some sort of trance, right? So they go from sentence to sentence until they actually reach the end of the copy. But if somewhere in between there is this massive paragraph, it takes them out of the trance, right? And then they're gone, kind of like.
If they're trying to reread it to understand, did I really get this? Like, how did they mean it?
Exactly. So like the attention span is so short, right? So that once they snap out, they're gone, right? You lost them. And like the second thing that you said, like algorithms, right? Because like, for example, if you're using LinkedIn, like the algo is actually like working for this like very short sentences which don't exceed one line like on the screen, right? If you look at the biggest creators on LinkedIn, like Justin Welsh, for example, like you will notice that all his copy is just like one line, one sentence, one line, one sentence, one line, one sentence, right? And that's how the copy goes. And that's what algorithm appreciates. And that's what it will push to more people. So the more complicated and bigger sentences you have, the algo will just push you down and will not show you content to anyone.
Not just will you lose people, but you will also lose algorithm and through that reach.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have now 4 more points, which I want to see maybe if we can combine them somehow. There is emotional roller coasters, lens of personal life, which is in a way related, storytelling, which is in a way related, and demand creation. So because it leads to demand creation. And I mean, you're the expert in this. So like, you know, I know you do this a lot through the lens of Instagram storytelling, but maybe in general in your content, like what does it mean to take people on an emotional roller coaster with you? Why is that an important thing to do? Why talk about your personal life when you're selling a professional service, storytelling, demand creation? Like what's the relationship of these things? What comes to mind?
Actually, like if you will allow me, I'll start from the end. I'll actually start from demand creation.
That makes sense because that's what we want to achieve, I guess. The rest is tools.
Exactly. So it's like, in a way, like every time when you're creating the storytelling, right, you need to think about demand generation, because like whatever content you put out there, like it's not just random content. The content needs to create demand in you as a human, as a person, right? Because humans connect to humans. It needs to create demand in your lifestyle, in like especially like if you are like a coach, if you're a yoga teacher, if you're creative, you know, like it's a demand for a certain lifestyle, right? For certain skills like that you have as an expert, and then demand for your product or service that you're selling at this point of time, right? So it's like it's multiple levels of demand creation. But actually like you as a person and creating demand for you is the basis for everything else, right? Because like I know that a lot of people, especially in the beginning of their journey, they would love not to put themselves so much out there, right? Because it's scary, it's uncomfortable. But actually, if you would observe even the biggest brands, they're not faceless, right? The biggest brands have like brand ambassadors who represent them. Why do you think they have brand ambassadors? Because this is someone who either is an authority to you or someone you can connect to like on an emotional level, right? It's the human who is understandable for you. That's why like no brand is actually faceless. Every brand has like some sort of brand ambassadors who represent them like from a human perspective, right? And also like the more, like even the big brand has the human qualities, the more it is creating the empathy and connection to the customers, right? So it's the same for you. Like when you are just like starting out, like as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, especially in the beginning, if you're a service provider, right? A lot of like the service that you provide is connected to you, to your personality, right? So you need to show who you are. And that's where it comes like the personal perspective that you mentioned there as well, right? Because just putting out there generic information, like sometimes like people tell you like, oh, just create like value and people will come, you know, like to get like services from you. Like this is not true. This is absolutely not true. Because if you only put in like the value out there and you like teaching people something and like, I don't know, like give them just the information, like for one, like they don't need to come to you to get the general information. Like in the age of AI,
ChatGPT.
Exactly. Like in the age of AI, you can get this information much faster and in a much better format than like what you are trying to do. Like when you're just starting out, because most probably you are still not that good with copywriting. Most probably you are still not so good with video creation, right? So like, why would people come to you? But your personal points of view, your personal experiences, they are unique. And people, especially in the age of AI, they're craving this uniqueness, right? And in understanding how it worked for you.
Humanity.
And humanity. And like an understanding how it worked for you through the lens of your personal experience, right? So, and that's again comes back to maybe like the hooks that we talked about before, right? Expressing your personal points of view on things, like even if you are sharing the information that you learned during your studies, give people your personal point of view on this, like what it did to you, like what it did for you, like how it was able to help you specifically on your journey. Give them an example of what happens like in your life, right? And how by implementing this tool, everything changed, right?
It's almost like the same as with the professional language, right? You're thinking you need to use professional language, and it's the same in this case. Like you think you need to tell the perfect framework solution, the way it's described in the books and stuff. But then, yes, you can just get the book, or listen to something somewhere else. But it's like really bringing your own perspective, even if it's like you may think, who cares about my perspective? But it's much more interesting than to read the general thing that you can read everywhere. And this is also another
100%.
mindset shift.
100%, right? Because otherwise people would just use you as encyclopedia, right? They came, watched some piece of content, okay, nice, and then pissed out. Like, why would they have the reason to buy from you, right? So no reason to buy from you. And that's where comes like another piece that you were talking about, this like personal storytelling as well, right? Like giving people information through the lens of your personal stories and experiences with this.
And the emotional roller coaster.
Wait a second, like we'll come to this, like, right? So this is like something much more valuable than just giving them generic information. So remember this, right? Like this is demand like for you as a person. Another thing like as demand for you as a person, this emotional roller coaster, why is it important to give people to experience through you different emotions? Because generally like we always think that we're very logical people. We are not, right? Because like there are like thoughts in our heads that are creating emotions, right, inside our body, and actually emotions are driving our actions. So if you want to, like kind of like help people to act in a way that they want to buy your services and they want to pay you money, right? So like you are with your marketing, so like why you're doing marketing and sales activities, right? Because you are trying to help people to make the decision to pay you money, right? Mm-hmm. So for them, in order to make this decision, they need to feel something. They need to feel emotional connection to whatever content you are creating. Because if there is no emotional connection, there is no action, right? And like from this perspective, like we can look at contents like on like 3 levels, right? And there is like the level of creating positive emotions for people, what we generally call as positive emotions, which like is all your inspirational, motivational posts, right? Like you love inspirational quotes, right? Motivational quotes, whatever, right? Like, so a lot of times people like, I don't know, like you probably like will agree with me that we hear from our clients, like, I want to inspire people, right? Like it's the general thing that everybody wants to, like I want to inspire other humans. And then you are trying to put all this content out there, which is very inspirational and motivational. Yes, you can do it. Awesome. This is the content that will give you the most likes. That will give you the most likes, that will give you shares. A lot of people will be sharing this content. It will give you very little amount of sales though. So you have to be very, very careful, like what are you actually after? Are you after generating cash in your business, or you're after just getting likes and approval from people, right? It's 2 very different things, right? Mm. So actually, whether you like it or don't like it, the inspirational content, with the plus sign, doesn't produce sales. So there is...
What produces sales then?
So there are like 2 other levels, right? So there is like also neutral content, and neutral content is like just more this dry expertise, right? And like this is the content that will get you way less likes, right? And way less shares, but it will create more sales for you, right? So like showing yourself as an expert, like showing your expertise, sharing your knowledge with people, right? This is something that will create much more sales for you. However, the content that creates the most sales and the one that majority of people would hate to produce is the one with the negative kind of like emotions or triggering negative emotions, or the one with the like minus sign kind of like as I call it, right? So like the negative one. Why? Because like emotional triggers, they actually do something to people when they want to create a change, right? So it's kind of like you're increasing their pain a little bit in a way, right? Like with making them feel like they're missing out, like they're maybe ashamed even of the status quo. They're really angry with their life situation, right? Like actually, like a lot of people like are scared to create anger and like in their customers,
by
right?
confronting them with those things.
Confronting them with those things, exactly,
yeah.
Right? But actually, anger is like a sling string, like because like I don't know how is it called? Slingshot, right? So you can like actually sling string. Okay, right? But it's kind of like you're basically like pulling people a little bit backwards to propel them forwards, right? And the anger is a very strong emotion that's like helps people to step into action, because a lot of times what happens, people tolerate the status quo in their life for really, really long until they've been given this, like this.
Do you ever
shot
hear
back.
those life-changing, life-transforming stories of people where they had a really good time and then they changed their life to have an even better time? No. It's usually they had a really shitty time. They
Exactly.
were struggling. They were in pain. They were suffering. And it reached the moment where you cannot take it anymore. And that's the moment when you make a change. So applying to these emotions just kind of gets people into that state of mind and gets them easier to the realization, hey, yeah, actually, there is this shit and I'm pissed off at it. I want to make some changes in my life, and then they're ready to buy. Because if they think it's a nice to have problem, they're not going to invest their hard-earned money into this, right? Because I can get a holiday in Bali and it's going to be probably pretty fun for sure. Or I can buy a new laptop. I know what I'm getting. Like, why would I invest in a service or something new, something life-transforming that I don't know about yet if there's no deep pain associated to it?
Yes, 100%. And I think like that's where people would struggle the most, right? Because like everybody wants to be the nice person, right? But it's kind of like, it's again, like, do you want to be the nice person? What do you want to be liked? Do you want the pat on the head?
Yes.
Do you want a badge of honor?
Yes.
Or you want to have money, right? And whether you like it or not, but the negative emotions create the most sales, right? Create the most cash. So you can be a good boy or girl, or you can actually make money, right? And if you want to make money, like you might as well look into like using these emotional triggers in your content as well, right?
Because it's not evil, because it is.
No.
It's purely a way to appeal to how the human brain works. Because the biggest fear is the fear of the unknown. And if there's someone new selling a service for the first time, if you're just getting out there, it's new, it's uncertain. And, unless there's a deep trigger that is like, well, I cannot take this anymore. Even if this is not sure, the status quo is horrible. It cannot be so much worse. Like if you don't get them to that state, the brain will not allow them to make this decision so easily. So it's actually allowing them to make a decision to improve their lives if you offer something in that sense. And any purpose-driven entrepreneur will offer in one way or the other a way to improve people's or planet's life. So
100%.
you're helping
right?
by being evil.
Right. So like, for example, like if I would show like how our students are making money within 6 weeks of Get Clients Bootcamp, and you are still sitting there, like wondering how to get the first client in the door, right? Like I'm triggering you a little bit, right? Because it's like, well,
if you're saying this, you're still sitting there
Yes,
trying to get your
exactly.
first client, huh?
Yeah. And look at these numbers,
yeah. It's
right?
Like, screw you, Olga.
Right? So like, just like think about this as well. And then there is a second layer to emotional roller coaster, because it's also kind of like, yes, people love success stories, right? Like of like you like overcoming something, right? And like, I don't know, like getting to like a better status in your life in whatever way, right? Like, I don't know, like if I would be like showing only how like, oh, like look at this, like how we're like living by the ocean with our family, and how we're like running this like 150K like business and like something, right? Like at some point, people will just get really annoyed at me because I'm just showing them successful success. Or bored, right? Because it's very flat.
Imagine what TV show or movie are you watching where it's just the whole time just kind of going good. It's kind of, at some point it's like, oh, it feels good to watch people doing good but at some point it's like, yeah, like, so people love to feel the breath. We are humans, we love to feel emotions. And even if you make them like go into a sad state, into a grief state, into an anger state, now they're being alive, they're feeling something, and they're feeling something in relation to you. And actually, even if it's bad emotions, it creates connection.
Exactly. It creates a lot of empathy. So for example, like if instead of just telling them like, oh, look at us, like how awesome we are, right? And like how you are not at the state at all yet, like I would show people the process of getting there with all the ups and downs, that's the hero journey, right? And that's why like we are so drawn to like watching shows, for example. Like think about like a Netflix episode, right? Like any Netflix episodes, right? Like it will never be just like the happy state and the success story of someone, right? There will be some shit happening. The hero needs to find their way out, right? And if they win in the end, they had to go through like the whole like maze of like different shitty situations that they had to overcome, right? So it's the same with your content. Like, why do you think people would drop their Netflix, what we were saying in the beginning, and start watching you? Instead, start watching your Instagram stories, or start watching your reels, or start, like, I don't know, reading your LinkedIn posts. Why would they do this? Like, there is so much other things, like many things that they can do instead of this, right? But if you're able to take them on this emotional roller coaster with you, they will be hooked, right? And then it becomes like in a way addictive.
Hook. And that's
Hook.
how we started the section. So
Exactly.
I'm going
We
to
made
use
the
this
first
opportunity.
I'm sorry, but like because we were talking about the demand creation for yourself as a person, right? But then creating the demand also for your lifestyle. And I think like, so this is maybe like specific also to Instagram as well, because it's like one of the platforms that also like majority of people use. So just bearing in mind as well that people come because of the lifestyle content, like on Instagram specifically, they stay and they buy because of the expert content, right? That's why like it's so important also to show your life, to show the lifestyle, because people will come back for this type of storytelling. But if you're able through this in like from different angles to show also demand for you as an expert, you know, that's like when they start thinking about buying from you, right? So like if you show your everyday life, but like through the lens of like, I don't know, like we might be talking about like, oh, today, for example, right? Like just before coming to record this podcast, we were doing a networking event, like, right? This is part of our life, but I might tell them like a bit of a story, how it all started, how it's been 1 year, why it is so important, right? Like
how
what
we had delicious specialty coffee.
Exactly, how we meet different people, what kind of people are there, right? Like it starts showing me as an expert, like I'm someone who is the lead of a community. I'm doing the community building activities, right? There are like people, this amount of people who's coming to these events, right? So I start like not in this like very like direct way, like in your like kind of like face, showing that I'm an expert, but I'm weaving this in, right? Like every time I tell these stories.
Within a thing that you do on your everyday life journey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? And then whatever you're doing, like if you're selling something at this moment of time, and actually like you should be selling all the time, right? If there is like something that you're selling at the moment, how is this connected to the product or service that you are selling, right? So it's like you never put anything random out there, but it's always either creating demand in you as a human, it's creating demand as you as an expert, and it's creating demand in your product or service, right? So you might connect it to some client cases, testimonials, anything that you're like working on, like behind the scenes of your product, right? So you need to show these things in your content because otherwise there is no demand. Demand creates more demand as well. So like if you are able to show how people are loving what you do, how they're loving the product, how they're asking you questions about this, how they're buying, if you can do screenshots of their DMs to you, like when they're inquiring about the services. If you can show, like, I don't know, how the money is coming in on your account because somebody bought from you, it creates more demand and desire to buy from you, right? Like, so show demand in yourself. So like once people see that other humans have demand in what you're doing, they will also start thinking, maybe I need this as well. FOMO. FOMO is kicking in.
FOMO.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So I think I'm going to switch the order a little bit here because we talked about general content creation, like rules to keep in mind, no matter what type of content you create. And actually, I was going to talk about process first, but now I'm going to, because you already mentioned a little bit on what to talk about, right? To create, to generate demand in you, to generate demand in your product. So it's like we also had one point on the agenda for today, which is about content production tips. And, you know, because once you start building content, you know, there's a way of how do you write each post, how do you record each video, which is kind of general rules we talked about just now. But then it's also overwhelming in the beginning, especially we work with mostly solopreneurs, people who build this business from zero to their first 100K in profits per year by themselves or with very little help, maybe with a partner, you know, and on this journey, you are doing everything. So you're also the content creator, and there's so many platforms out there, and, you know, there's a stage where you just maybe can use your network, what you got already, but there's going to be a stage also where you want to increase reach. We're going to talk about the process afterwards. So in terms of, you know, what to talk about, I think that was like the first decision to be able to produce and manage the content production efficiently in the beginning is to understand what to talk about. And you mentioned this earlier, you don't just talk random. And that's how that's how I started thinking about it.
Same here, guilty.
Okay, just like, oh yeah, coaching something, because we started out as, you know, coaches, as life coaches, and then business coaches, and then we came to where we are right now, you know, with this holistic business building support. But as we started out with coaching, it's like, oh, I'm going to share some things I learned along the way, and you were like reading new books and sharing random concepts from these books. And it's like, yes, it sort of makes the connection of people to you roughly in that space, but it's a very inefficient use of your valuable time that you have very little of in the beginning, once you probably still have a job to generate income. So how do you decide what pillars to talk about? If I have like, these are the 4 things I'm going to always talk about, how do you decide these things? Just to give yourself some focus. Long question.
It's actually like, no, it's awesome question. It's actually very simple, right? Like, so if we,
Perfect.
like, it's simple, but not easy, right? So it's kind of like simple because if you have a certain niche, that's why like we're like constantly like hammering into people like
niche down.
niche down, exactly 3 to 4 times, right? Like if you have a very specific niche, right? Within this niche, you have like an ideal customer. And if you did your due diligence, right, and you had the interviews with the customers, like you ask them about their pains, like what are they actually suffering from, right? Like what are the things that are bothering them on everyday level? What are their desires? What they actually want to have, like on the back of it, right? Like as the wished for status. How your product or service is the bridge between the kind of like the problem and the desire that they have, right? And then like talking and explaining like your product, like and like the main features inside of this, right? That's basically like starts to becoming your content pillars. It's actually something that you need to talk over and over and over again, right?
So what's the problem to show them you understand the problem? What are their wishes to show them you understand their wishes? And then, generating demand in your product is kind of like, here's the bridge and this is how I structure it, and this is why I structure it this way, and to explain it in all logical ways to get it into the brain for people to understand and believe, okay, this seems like a really solid solution to this problem.
100%. And then like the maybe one thing on top is also your authority, right? Because it's like it's the pains, the desires of the customer, how your product is the bridge, but then they also need to believe, or like they need the reason to buy from you specifically, because most probably, especially like, I don't know, like if you're a coach, if you're a yoga teacher, if you're a photographer, videographer, if you're a stylist, there are many other out there who are offering similar services, right? So like, why should they buy from you? Like, what is your authority? What is your personal story, right? So it's kind of like, so this is another part of it. So, and basically what you're constantly talking about is like the problems of your customer, like in different ways and variations. That can be case studies, that can be testimonials, that can be, I don't know, your personal story. Like, and a lot of times when you're starting out, you don't have any testimonials to show, but you can lead with your personal story, right? Like what problems you were facing, like what were you experiencing at the time, like that was, right? You can talk about all these things. So that's where you can get
creative, right? To show from whatever angle that you come at it, you can explain the problem. And always, again, talk to your customer, niche down, otherwise it's going to be difficult to find them. Then talk to them, use their words as you describe their problem, right? That's why you said also use testimonials, because they will be talking about the problem maybe they had then before they came to you, which then they overcame, and they will talk about it in their words in a testimonial. So that's point 1, problems.
Then talk about like what we call kind of like in copywriting, it's called futurescaping. So talk about like the status quo of their life after they like go through your service. Like how would their life look like, right? And use their desires. Like what do they wish to have, right? And you can show constantly like, oh, like actually, if you just remove this XYZ problem that you have, your life could be looking like this.
Lying on the beach, not working, getting passive income.
Exactly, like what majority of corporate professionals wish for, right?
Yes.
So that's basically like, and you can absolutely like show it from like different angles once again. And it's not necessarily that it always needs to be like explicitly told to people, right? Like a picture sometimes like tells 1,000 words, right? If like I'm just like shooting my content somewhere like on the beach by the ocean, showing them like, oh, I'm just like lying on my blanket here with my book, right? Like in the middle of a working day.
Talking about their problems.
Talking about their problems, right? And then like actually like your life could look like this. Just come work with me, right?
Okay, so problem 1, wishes and desires. 2, the bridge and how that works. 3, and 4, to weave in authority throughout the process as well.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the 4 main talking pillars that you can always put yourself. All right. So if you have, let's assume people have gone through this. They have their talking pillars. These are my 4 talking pillars. Then there's like a mass of social media networks, because it's the easiest and free channel to get out there with, right? And you don't want to put all your eggs maybe in one basket, but you don't want to like cater materials, because who has time? Even just writing one post a day is a strain a lot of the time. How to do it for like 5-6 different formats and social media channels. So what we always say is to like pick your most natural formats that you feel best about, that you're naturally good at, and then produce original content in there, and then use a process of trickling it down to other social media channels. So what are your like thoughts on this one?
So for one, like I would even like start a bit earlier, and I think like again what we're talking about, niching down and looking at your ideal customer. Like, and if you once again did your due diligence and you ran the interviews with them,
do interviews,
you would know where they are usually hanging out. Like, even if we're talking about social media, for example, like on which platforms, like to which platforms do they go to get the information about this topic you're expert in? You know, like if somebody is like, I don't know, wants to get a promotion, where would they go to learn about like maybe communication skills or how to manage a team or whatever that is, right? Like how to get more confidence, like, or whatever. Like where would they source this information from, right? If somebody is divorcing, you know, like, and they like going through the pain of separation, like with their partner, where would they go to seek some information and help and support, right? So they will tell you the channels. And this needs to become the primary channel of your communication, not because in your head you think that's like, oh, like being on Instagram is nice and I can put all these nice pictures there. Nobody cares if your ideal customer is not there. Then why are you spending time like on that platform, right?
For example, if they tell you that they learn about stuff in a podcast, you know, you want to build a podcast because that's where
Exactly.
they're going to look for information in relation to what you have to offer.
Exactly. Why do you think we're here today, right? So, right. So it's kind of like really like ask people, right? Like don't assume anything. Ask them where they're looking for this information. And then of course, like for one, it might get like super overwhelming. And I would always recommend to start with like 1 or 2 platforms first, right? Like just nail those ones down, and then you will start like moving to more platforms, because like yes, down the line you will need to create more touch points across different platforms in order to like more efficiently sell to people. But in the beginning, that will just burn you out. Like it's just direct path to burnout. Don't do this to yourself. So pick the 2 like main platforms where you people hang out, right? If for example they're on LinkedIn and YouTube, these are your 2 primary channels. Like don't even think about like anything else in the beginning.
And this actually speaks to the process and the stages that we're gonna go to in a second to wrap up today. But you know what you're saying, like in the beginning, the first stage, and we'll talk about that in a second, is more about even just understanding one channel or two core channels is already a stretch. Like, but understanding at least the one core channel and figuring out a way what is natural for you. Are you rather like a video talking head person?
Exactly.
Are you rather a great article copywriter? Like, what's your natural format? And then double down on that. This is the format you're gonna use as a base.
100%, because right, like for like it's kind of like you need to try to remove the barrier of like content creation for yourself. And if you're like trying to go like too hard on yourself, and like if you feel super uncomfortable on video, and now you're spending all your time trying to like create something like by being like a talking head like expert, you know, like it's gonna drain you. So a lot of times like it's much easier to start with like whatever is comfortable. It's much more comfortable for you to write the copy. Start with writing the copy, you know, and just put some picture next to it. Like if it's more natural for you to go on the video and like and you do it quite easily, use the video. Again, like depends a lot. Like sometimes you can find like easy ways of doing it. Like do you remember Daphne, like the dance teacher, right? Like she's been talking about like going on TikTok, you know, and then she was like freaked out. It's like, I'm a dance teacher, but what I'm supposed to like dance on a TikTok video, you know, like doing like all the stupid stuff, right? And she felt so much resistance. She was almost crying. Like she's like, I don't want to do this. Like it's uncomfortable. I was like, hey, like, you know, like why don't you film yourself during the dance classes? You know, like, because actually that shows your expertise. Like, do you have any problem? You know, like when you're teaching a class, she's like, no, this is completely natural. So, hey, here's your solution. Just put the camera on the side, record yourself as you're doing the dance class, cut it in shorts, like, you know, snippets. Here you go.
And looks amazing.
It looks amazing.
I can't believe she didn't want to go on video, like dancing. Like she's dancing amazing.
Right. But it's like, just like, it's about like thinking like how else can you create this content? If it's uncomfortable for you to talk directly in the camera, right? Like maybe, I don't know, like you're giving masterclasses or you're like talking to
interviews,
or interviews, you know, like then just record this like with the camera from the side and post those,
Have someone interview you. For some of our clients are like, oh, can you interview me? Because it feels unnatural to just record something. But if someone just asks me a question, then I can talk very natural. It's no problem.
Exactly.
So like figuring out this, or for you just talking like, like blah, blah. Yeah, like you have a random thought and you're going to freestyle a story about this. For me, it's like, I rather want to think through a framework or a concept that I want to teach people, and I want to run down the framework, and I want to do more of this teaching kind of way and prepare it in this way, and then it works naturally for me. If I just go share a random thought, I'm going to lose myself in randomness, because that's a little bit of who I am. So for me, it's more natural and more professional to do it in this way, and then I do it much easier as well.
Exactly. So don't make it more difficult for yourself than it already is. Find the easy way to put the content out there. And as you do this, you will learn other ways, right? And once you feel super comfortable with this, you can move on to other formats if you want to, grow yourself.
And you're gonna have to, especially if you become a content creator, right? You're gonna have to we're now starting to do more ads. Like when you get into the space of doing something new, where it's highly scripted, for example, and it's new for us to learn these kind of ways of doing things. And we're going to be experts in it. We're going to be amazing at it. We're going to be so comfortable doing it. But when you start out, when we started out doing the first ones, it was very uncomfortable, very unnatural, but that's okay. So in the beginning, start with what's most natural, because it'll get you over this hump of just starting with content production. At some point, when you up your game and you go a bit bigger on this content creation topic, you just learn by doing, and you will get an expert. It's just a mindset thing.
100%. And this mindset is it can only get better from here. It's kind of when you start out, it's kind of also the acceptance of the fact that most probably you're going to be shit in the beginning. And this is totally normal, because you are the beginner. You're just starting out. But it's going to be only that bad at this point of time. And from here onwards, it's just only going to get better, because as you get more experience, you ultimately get better with what you are doing, right?
So take action, because if you don't take action, you will stay the same always.
Exactly. And the longer you wait, the longer you're kind of postponing the moment of when you're becoming expert in something, right? And you're becoming natural and easy with whatever you are doing in terms of content.
All right. So to sum up this point, we have talked so far about general rules of how to talk about stuff in general, what are some rules to pay attention to. And then we talked about content production and how, to choose content pillars and how to, choose the right format. And then there's also the point of, pre-production versus on the go, because and I don't know if you want to say something specific about this, maybe a very short one I'll give you. As the host of today, I'll give you 1 minute on this one. But it's basically, the idea there was to talk about this as the last point in content production, rules or tips for content production, because it is such a strain. It was such a strain on us in the business to constantly every day produce content whilst selling, whilst building the product, whilst doing taxes, whilst doing everything. So actually getting one problem out of your way, right, by pre-producing content for the next week or month or whatever, so you can have free mind space for the other activities. Any 1 minute kind of talk?
No,
points?
I think it's very smart to batch content, and probably you hear it not only from us, but you hear it from other people. But it really does help, because if you allocate some time and you already go into the flow and you just batch contents once, it's much easier than restarting every day, right? So help yourself out by batching the content in advance, and don't be scared to repurpose. A lot of times, I don't know, if you recorded a video, transcribe it, use the text as your copy, as the written post on LinkedIn somewhere or whatever this is. Take a short snippet of it, put it on X or Threads. If you made something for your Instagram reels, put them on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts. Just really don't be afraid to repurpose content, because in your head everybody saw this. In reality, nobody saw this, because again, going back to what we said in the beginning, you are competing for their attention with their whole freaking life, dogs, children, chores, work, relationships, whatever that is.
Yes, so quantity, actually, it's an important one, to not underestimate the amount of content you need to create for people, for a relevant size of audience to actually see it. And then I think there was one more thing. This planning element I wanted to speak to. Actually, now I came up with an additional thing. But it's easy to say like just pre-produce a lot of stuff, right? But we are all about hyper practical, tangible things. So when you're about to go do that, like do make a plan up front, because you're not going to sit there and then come up with all the content like spontaneously. Like think about these pillars, think about the different channels that you have, think about like what are the different elements you're going to, and it's going to take a bit of time to just do the plan, right? What am I going to talk about every week, every month? And then how much content will I need for this? Say I need 7 videos, and think about, you need to do a little mini research on each platform. Like how much content do I need for which platform to kind of, for the algorithm to at least, pick up on me a little bit. Like this is the bare minimum. This is the optimum. Okay, this is the optimal length. And now you have all the parameters set, and now you can just sit down and produce. Right? And to have the ideas prepared and to have the scripts prepared. And that takes some time, but really it's worth it, because you may lose 1 or 2 weeks on really thinking this through and preparing and batching another month of content. But then you produce for 1 week, and then you have 4 weeks of focusing on other topics of the business, right? Until you do again another pre-production. So really planning this thing, and it can be a simple Google sheet where you just like have a list of things that you need to produce.
100%. And that's something that we also do with our clients in Get Clients Bootcamp, for example, right? Because we batch the content for the 3 weeks to come ahead, right? And then like this content is pre-done, this content is pre-scheduled. And then for the whole duration of these 3 weeks, the only thing you can be focused on is selling. Then you actually like observing how people respond, like you're answering DMs, you're jumping on sales calls, but you're not wasting your time on thinking what I'm posting today, right? So like it actually, like if you plan and batch in advance, it frees you time to be like present with your customers, to be like actually focused on sales rather than on like content creation.
And think a bit in between,
yes.
Not just doing stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have about like 5 minutes or so left to talk a little bit about process, because I think it's also very important to touch on this topic, at least today. So we had a lot of practical tools for people to take home already. But in terms of how to think about content creation in general, and what we always say, there's two kind of main stages on this journey from 0 to 100K in terms of how to think about content creation. After you have, your idea that you like, I want to be a coach who helps people shift their careers from this to that. That may be your idea. Now you need to validate, and you've interviewed people in that space. Now you need to validate that people are actually willing to pay you for this service based on what they said. You kind of have a hypothesis based on the interview data, but now you need to test it. And there's a certain type of content creation required in this phase, which is more sales focused. And then there's a second phase, which is more the stability phase. Now you have seen sales come in. Okay, I feel confident people want this service. People are willing to pay me for this service. So now it's a matter of creating stability of people wanting to pay for the service. And that's a different type of content creation game. That's more growing your audience, because, in the beginning you're selling to your audience and you can convert some people, but this bucket will end. It's an ending bucket, not an endless bucket, right? So you need to expand that bucket, and that's where you need to, expand your reach beyond your network, and you need to create trust, and you need to, build systems where you generate more leads, where you nurture them, and where you convert them. So it's 2 focuses: sales focused, more, system nurture, like creation focused. So what comes to your mind in terms of thinking of 2 systems in content creation?
So for one, I think like when we are starting out, there is a lot of experimentation, right? So it's like, so there is a general rule and kind of like framework that we use in this very initial stage, right? And like as Karsten said, the beginning stage is not for building your brand, right? Like I know like many people will be very upset with me saying this, but if you don't have if you haven't confirmed that there is a customer who is ready to pay for your services, for whom are you building the brand? Like it doesn't make any sense.
But it's fun to build a brand.
I know it's fun to build the brand, and I know that's like, sorry for like straightforwardness, but people hide behind it because it's very comfortable to build the brand, to think about the brand colors and like, I don't know, the tone of voice and how like I'm gonna look like on this picture. That's all cool, but it's not actually that brings the paying clients in the door. Once again, like, do you want to look nice and be liked and get a lot of likes, or you want to get money, right? So there is a difference. And your first marketing push is all about generating this first sales. And it's not even about the generating like this stable income, as you might think. It's not at all. It's just confirming that there is the customer out there who's ready to pay actual cash, not barter with you, not just say it's nice or whatever, good luck with what you are doing, like looks very nice, but actually to take out their wallet and pay cash for what you are offering.
May I say
Yes.
something to this? Just to, before you move on to another topic, like on this specifically, right? People come to us when we say this to them, but I've been working in like big brands like, we have, and this is not how marketing works. Marketing works, where you build a brand and you do this and you do that. And that's true if you have a multi-billion euro business that is already going very well and has a long proven track record. If you're just starting out in the very, very beginning with a new offer, you are validating your offer. And in order to validate your offer, building a big brand for 5 years and then to sell for the first time, and you're like, oh crap, nobody wants this brand that I've built. People like it, but nobody wants any product that this brand sells. Well, you've just wasted 5 years. So spend this beginning 3 months on just like figuring out what are people wanting to buy. And that means to be salesy, it doesn't, like salesy has a lot of bad connotations to it, but it doesn't have to be bad, as we discussed earlier, right? It's about helping people. It's about validating your offer. And also another thing that people go wrong in oftentimes is, but I'm putting this product out there, but it's a lot of work to put this one product out there for this one human that I'm offering something for a low price point. Never can I build a life around that. But as you said, that triggered this kind of in me right now. Like it's not there to make a solid profit for you and a stable profit. It's just there to validate.
Exactly. So, and that's why like you would need different methodologies and different systems on every stage of business building, right? But the beginning stage, and like I really want to, like I can't stress this enough, that's like it needs to be about validating that the customer exists and how we are validating, right? So like we're going into like a sales sequence kind of like, and how we usually do it is really the 3 weeks of content, right? And the first week is all about like showing your expertise, your authority, something that we talked about before, right? It can be like about like talking your personal story, how you dealt with this specific problem that you're helping people with, like how you have created results for yourself, right? It can be like talking about your experiences like in similar fields before, like if we're helping people with marketing and sales, I might be talking about my previous experiences, right? And all these big corporations, right? And like working like with marketing and sales for many years, right? Like, I can be talking about, like my own journey and how I like went from like, I don't know, 0 to 100K, right? So I can be talking about all these things and through this establishing my expertise, right? So, and you need like at least a week for this because like, again, like a lot of people think that they like posted something once and they're like, oh my God, I can't talk about it again because I already talked about it like 5 days ago. It's like, nobody gives a crap seriously because like people have too many other things to pay attention to. So in order to kind of hammer into them and like to be sure that at least once somebody saw this, do it for at least a week, right? Like every day, show it from different angles, be consistent with this. Because if you did it once and then you backed off because you only got 3 likes on it, well, guess what? Like you just robbed people of the chance to actually see the wonderful product that you are selling.
So this is week 1, right? And we talk about 3 weeks, and it's a every day in 3 weeks kind of frame to make it very efficient, right? To like have people see this entirety of the sequence in one go rather than spreading it out over months, right? That's why we say every day, and that's why we have 3 weeks. So that's week 1. What's week 2?
Week 2, like you might want to talk about your offer and really as much detail as possible because people need to understand what the heck they're gonna get if
Would
they
you
pay
buy
money.
anything if you don't understand it?
Exactly. So like you might talk about like, like the main thing, like don't really talk about the process. That's where a lot of people go wrong, right? Describing the process. Nobody cares about the process, but people care about the results they're gonna get. Like what will be the key outcomes that people get by working with you? Talk about like the key features that you have like in your product that people requested in their interviews. Talk about the bonuses, talk about the guarantees, talk about like, like what experiences people had with that. If you have any testimonials, right? If you have any client cases, if you have testimonials, if you had even people who tested it for free, doesn't matter, talk about the experiences, right? Like show like how your product actually changed something for people.
So I just need to jump in on this because like I agree, first of all, like results, right? It's like, it's people don't do your service because of the features. People do it because of the results. So obviously talk about the tangible results people will have. Talk about the features because people in the interviews, they will have told you what they think they need to get there. And you need to build this into your thing. And if they see the same feature that they think they need to achieve this result, great. And you said something that is, very close to my heart. You said, don't talk about the process. And I'm like, and I think I agree, right? The other steps are much more important, but the process is also important in the sense of explaining people the logic of why you put them together in this way. And sometimes you also add something on top of what they have told you because you're an expert, and sometimes you do know more than your customer. You definitely need to give them what they want, but you also give them what you know they don't know yet. And you need to, the more I can explain, okay, I'm using this and this as well because here's some scientific paper that proves this and that. And you explain your methodology and your process in that way, in that sense, it can make sense to talk about, just not get lost in this as a main factor.
So like what I meant about the process, like, okay, let's take the example of a coach, right? Because a lot of times, like what people start talking about in their marketing is the process of coaching. Oh, you're going to come to me and I'm going to ask you open-ended, curious questions to which you're going to give me answers. And people are like, the hell, like, and in the process, we will like something, nobody cares, right? But it's like, if you come working with me and you can describe the process, but more like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, right? On step 1, like we're going to do this and this to get you this results. On step 2, we're going to do this and this to get this results, right? But you're not talking about like how you're going to ask them open-ended questions, because like nobody cares,
Yes.
but they care about, what are the steps and what are the key outcomes on each of the step, but not like exactly how you get into the results, that nobody cares.
Yes, thank you for clarifying this important topic for me.
Process.
So to summarize, as we're wrapping up now, so there's 2 stages also in terms of process, right? One, where you're just out there to validate your offer. That's not to make a profit. That's not to build a sustainable program yet. That's just to see, is anyone actually willing to pay for what I'm offering? And there you are showing your expertise. You are explaining your offer in week 2, and we didn't get to this, but we have it in another podcast, I think, where we talk about the process entirely. It's about, tackling objections, to tackle urgency, to really what was the other thing?
No, it's like it's basically this. You're answering objections and you're pressing a bit the urgency because you want people to make decision now because you need to validate, right? Rather than postponing this decision. So you need to give them some sort of urgency. Urgency in terms of it's just limited amount of spots, the super early bird price is expiring, like whatever that is, right? So objections that people have and urgency. And after you went through this 3 weeks, of marketing push, you need to take a step back and you will need to analyze, the data, and just looking what were the outcomes from this? Did I get people inquiring about my services from what I did? If you didn't get people inquiring about your services, most probably you didn't do a good job on your interviews because then you didn't nail down their problems, you didn't nail down their desires.
Which doesn't have to be the fault of you not asking the right questions. It could be just that they didn't give you the true answer because of the way you asked the questions, maybe. Even though so there's a lot of sensitivity around that process.
Yes, 100%, right? But it's kind of like if you didn't get any what we call traffic, right? If you didn't get any leads inquiring about your services, something is wrong with the way how you did the interview. So you need to go back to the drawing boards and do more interviews to inquire more about the problems, the desires, the solutions people want to have, right?
So that's stage 1. Week 1, expertise. Week 2, product. Week 3, objections and urgency. And that's in all of this, every day you're making offers. As you're talking about each of these things, every day you make an offer. Hey, by the way, I have this to sell. Talk to me. At least talk to me to learn more.
Call to action, CTA, right? So you make a call to action.
Check out the details here. Click this button to this. Talk to me. Book a call with me. Whatever it is, right?
It's actually important because majority of people forget about call to action, but it's one of the most important things that you need to do.
And one call to action.
One call to action, yes.
And that's kind of the first phase of business building and content creation done for that, where you constantly make sales offers and you follow this framework, plus minus. And then there is the next step, which is stability creation. And there, just to summarize, and we didn't go deep into this today, and we will go deeper, I think, as we talk about funnel building, etc., in another one. But this is about audience building, where you not, maybe make posts, but you think about which formats expose me to a wider audience beyond my network, like reels on Instagram or ads. If you're using ads to bring people to your profile,
collaborations with other people, with bigger audiences.
Exactly, and it's also like not all your or your reels or whatever will have like calls to action for a sales offer, but it could be more a long-term game where you're like building a list, give me your data for a freebie. And now you have the data. Now you can start nurturing these people with the data that you got from them. And eventually you position an offer every 4 or 5, touch points. You position an offer and at some point they'll be ready to buy. And that's like the whole idea of growing an audience and building a system around that to generate more stability with income.
But I think like important one, and I think like maybe we can wrap them then up. But it's like a lot of times people have this, again, like misconception, the same as they think that they need to start with their brand building and like with creating logos and like colors and designs and everything. They think that they need to start building funnels from the get-go. Like, and it's a mistake, because like if you haven't confirmed that there is a customer to pay for whatever you're offering with these initial steps that we discussed, like for whom are you building the funnels? Like then you're just like spending a lot of like time, but also a lot of times money, right? Because like people think that they need to start with ads right away. Like we also heard it from our clients, like nonstop. They're just starting out. They don't have even like an offer properly, right? And they're like, oh, like what about the ads? It's like, yeah, you haven't even confirmed that there is the customer who wants to buy your offer, right? And that's why I was like talking about the fact that's like, okay, like you need to confirm, like if you are like creating this content in the first stage, that there are people who are actually coming in with inquiries. If they're coming with inquiries, but you're not able to sell to them, like to actually close the sale and get paid, then there is most probably either the problem with your offer itself, so something is missing, or the problem with your sales skills, or both, right? So you need to refine this. And until you have nailed down these 3 things, like traffic generation, like, like getting inquiries, converting people, like getting your offer right, like you can't build funnels, you can't run ads. It's a waste of money. It's money down the drain. Don't do this to yourself. Like it's not a smart decision to make, right? So first, go through these steps, confirm the client exists, you're able to convert them, you're able to get paid, and then you can start like identifying what is the repeatable sales process you can create from this. But I think that's something for another time for us.
All right. So some general rules to follow. Think about production, pre-produced, talk about things that matter. Don't talk about random things. Don't spend your valuable time on random stuff, but follow what works and what is needed based on the stage you're in. And there is stages of business building in the beginning, and both require different content approaches and strategies. In the beginning, more of a sales approach. Later on, more of a system like lead generation, nurture, convert system type approach, which we can cover in a separate place. And then I think if you have like the time or the desire to go a bit deeper, below this episode, we'll leave a link to the Content Creation Foundations mini course we've created, where you go a little bit more into creating engaging content that converts, which is more focused on this initial stage of business building, and also specifically talking to Instagram and story building and going a bit deeper on this topic as well. So if you're interested, check that out. And apart from that, thank you for watching. I think this is a wrap, or listening, depending on where you're coming in from. Okay, bye, peace.
Bye, peace.
Thank you, Yarin.